I am Jeremy, co-founder of NEWaukee. Today we are joined by Amanda from Fiveable and Ben Stanley from Generator. This program is brought to you by North Shore Bank and Ginger Lazovik at Shorewest Realty. So I appreciate them for their contribution. Today, the Lamplight, we really focus on targeting Wisconsin entrepreneurs, telling their story, talking about the ups, the downs, and everything in between. I'm going to turn it over to my co-host here.
So, hello, I'm Amanda Daering of Newance. Thanks to those who are either joining us on the Facebook Live or joining us here. If you do have any questions along the way, please put them in the group chat, put them in the Facebook comments. This is intended to be a casual conversation, and so let us know what you're wondering about along the way.
Awesome. Well, Amanda, why don't you kick us off and introduce yourself and your company?
Me, Amanda.
Yes, correct. I'll have to keep doing that. We'll just call Darlene. And then you'll know who I'm talking about.
Awesome. So my name is Amanda DoAmaral. I'm the founder of Fiveable. We are building a social learning network for, right now, high school students and teachers, really to build a content library that's accessible, but also a community space that really engages the kids in a way that just kind of, democratizes education.
Excellent. And I'm going to have Ben Stanley introduce himself from Generator. And we invited Ben on this show because Amanda is going to tell us the story of her entrepreneurship journey. And then Ben, who has kind of been there along the way, is going to tell us what really happened. So Ben, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm Ben Stanley. I'm the managing director of Generator Milwaukee and Generator Madison. So I run our equity-based accelerator programs here in the state. I had the pleasure of meeting Amanda, I think about somewhere close to 16, 18 months ago, when she went through our Madison 2019 accelerator.
Excellent. So Amanda, why don't you tell us the story about Fiveable, of how you initially had the idea, and what were you doing at the time, and kind of just lay out that roadmap for us.
Yeah. So I was a teacher. I taught 9th and 10th grade history, mostly AP classes in Oakland for 5 years. And so while I was teaching, basically I was kind of handed an AP class because in Oakland you become a veteran teacher very fast. And as I was handed AP World, it was confusing because there was 17 kids in there that did not reflect the diversity of the school or the district or any part of Oakland. And I had found out that it was only 2 kids also were passing. And so it was this corner of the school that had just been not given any attention. And so myself and my colleague really took it upon ourselves to build out that AP program because we knew that that was the first AP class that they would take, and that could totally change the trajectory of where the kids went after that. So we spent our whole time teaching, really upping the enrollment and the pass rates to the point where when I left that school in the 2016-17 school year, there were over 100 kids taking AP World and 70 kids passing. And so it's just a huge bump. And it was because we've created a really strong community in our classroom, and also held the bar really high. The rigor was high. They had to write a lot and they hated me for it, but they loved me by the end of the year because they would pass. So after I left the school, I spent some time traveling. I was working then I worked on a congressional campaign in upstate New York. And so right around January of 2018, I started hearing from some former students that were just in total panic mode. They were now in 11th grade AP US history, and their teacher was not someone who was doing all those innovative things. And so the emails were Ms. D, you got to help us. We're all going to fail. And of course I'm what is going on over there? What can I do? I got to do something. I can't let them fail. And so I just started live streaming, and that became our space because I knew I could take them through the content and the skills, but I also knew that they just needed some confidence. They needed me to just calm them down and boost them up. And so that's really how it all got started. Those initial live streams were for them. And then it quickly spiraled out as I shared the links on Reddit and teacher Facebook groups. And what started as me teaching history became, a bunch more teachers streaming. And then we added more content. And so, 2 years later, we're sort of just an evolution of that on the content side and on the community side.
At what point during that timeline did you know it was going to be a company or something you would do in the foreseeable future?
I mean, when the kids first started asking for streams, and then once I started sharing it out and realizing that there was demand for them, I think that's when I realized, like, I know that something's happening. I'm onto something. And so I left the campaign and decided to move back home with my mom in Maine and just build. And that was sort of the beginning of like, something's here. And then it wasn't until even like a little bit further down that it actually became Fiveable. And once the kids were really pushing for me to teach beyond history, that also kind of opened up the door too. So it was pretty much like April 2018 that it was like, this is Fiveable and this is going to be something. I didn't know really what, but I knew it was going to be something.
That's awesome. Ben, Generator is a really competitive program. You get like 1,000 applications. Talk to us a little bit about what you saw in Fiveable when that application came through.
Also, Ben denied me my startup idea.
I was actually thinking a lot about this just before we hopped on. There was a moment, so I'll give you just kind of a quick rundown. We had I think it was one of our largest applicant pools that Amanda had come in on. I think we had more than 1,050 companies apply. And when we narrow them down, we usually do 3 rounds of interviews. So we'll take a subset of roughly 150, 200. We'll do some quick interviews with them as an intro. We'll kind of keep narrowing from there. I think I met Amanda for the first time on her second interview, I believe it was.
Remember.
And one of the questions we kind of ask, everybody is essentially, how did you find your teammates? If they've got them, if they're not a solo founder, and how did you bring them aboard? And I remember coming out of the meeting being really kind of awestruck by Amanda in particular, just based on that one answer to the question. She was describing to me essentially what she just went over about how things got started in this origin story and how it evolved based on her teaching experience and this kind of organic demand that her former students were pulling her into. And then she kind of described making some Reddit posts and meeting some interesting people that included Tan and her CTO and Austin. And what she had said to me that really stood out was she somehow convinced a bunch of these people to move into a house in Philadelphia with her without ever meeting her in person, to quit their jobs or move across the country and put everything on hold just to work on this thing. And if experience has taught me anything in working with these early stage entrepreneurs, it's that everybody, number one, needs a vision, but if you can't effectively communicate it and you can't rally this group around you and kind of activate networks around the cause, the chances of success just plummet. And I think that's true outside of even just entrepreneurship. I think it's true for social movements, political movements, people scientists who make innovative breakthroughs. They just end up being people who are really great at kind of clearly communicating a vision. And I'd never heard of someone doing it that effectively early on with just kind of this idea and this kind of passion for it. So when I remember coming out of the second meeting being a little bit blown away, just kind of I can't believe she was able to accomplish that in a short period of time. And at that point, it was kind of, she went through the final round and that still kind of stood out. And I haven't regretted that decision since. I think she's kind of proven out pretty with a bold line how important that quality really is.
I can't even get people to come over my backyard, and you get people to move across the country.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. I was like, are you guys sure you want to do this?
So Amanda, I was thinking back before this, and I'm not even going to speculate on the dates because I'll get them wrong, but I have a really distinct memory of you and I getting together for drinks one night, and we were both so tired, and so it was not a high point of entrepreneurship. I don't even remember what was happening for both of us. We were just right. And then when did we see each other? Maybe a month later, and it was things had swung and it was a huge high point. I'm curious, for people who are tuning in, so one of the things I do is talk to people like you when I'm feeling low and I want to keep my energy up. But what advice do you have for people about some of those highs and those lows?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of the swings are huge and they can be within one day, even in an hour. I think in the times that I've been the most just down of I don't know how I'm going to make payroll, or there's some sort of, conflict going on, or you get to a point where you're like, I'm not really sure how I'm going to like overcome this. And like, we might not. And then you start to like, I don't know, you start to figure out like in the depths of it in the early days, there were so many close calls for us of just like, I don't know if this is going to exist. Like I might need to go get another job. And then I would start thinking through like, okay, well, if I have to shut everything down, what would I do next? And then I would think about that whole list, and then it would just sound like too much work, honestly. And then I was like, well, I'll just send one more email and see if I can like keep this afloat because it just sounded easier. But I think that you just have to like kind of lean into it. Like some days are just like not the greatest. And like some weeks or some months are like, even like right now, like we're all kind of struggling with it, with just burnout in general. Like it's just kind of hard to, even though things are really good, we are still feeling all kinds of different things. And so I think we have to just take care of ourselves in every way that we can. And for me, that means like taking full breaks, binge watching some shows, calling my mom and ranting for an hour, like just disappearing, like walking around, like there's all kinds of things. And so I think I just like let myself do that. And then there's always something that kind of like brings me back. Like there's some spark or some idea. And then next thing I know, it's, 7 a.m. and I just like went in on something.
Can we go back to this house? I'm kind of curious. Can you elaborate on that story a little bit more? And I think you obviously have a unique office, I'll say, for people that don't know.
Yeah. So when I was working on the congressional campaign, the reason that's where the idea came from, because I was traveling and I wanted to get into campaigns and I didn't know how to do that. And I had found this opportunity of this candidate in New York that had rented a house and like created this fellowship. And they weren't really paying you, but they were paying your rent and they were, buying you other things. And I was like, I'm in. I basically like bought a ticket back. I stopped traveling. I came back to Maine. I took all my stuff and drove to upstate New York, even though that sounded like a crazy idea. And so when I hit this point in Fiveable, when I really needed a team, I needed I'm not a technical founder. So I needed developers. I needed marketing. I'm sort of the like domain expert. I didn't know some of these other things, but I didn't have enough money to hire anybody. And so I was trying to figure out like, how do I get people to join me, even though I don't know what I can give them, And so I had just gotten like follow-on funding from my very first accelerator. And so I had $20,000, which sounded like the world. And I was like, what if I did the same thing? What if I just rented a house? It doesn't even matter where in the world it is, but if I rent a house, I pay for rent, I pay for groceries, and, we do equity, but like, we're not going to pay ourselves until we can pay ourselves. Like, let me write up a whole Medium article. I need to sell myself in this, right? Like they have to want to work with me and they have to want to work on this idea. And so I put together this article, I posted it on Reddit, and then I just kind of was like, let's see what happens. And Ton was like one of the first people I actually heard from. And I guess my guess then was that there was people out there that weren't, super committed to their job or weren't happy or weren't challenged and that wanted to do something adventurous. And I found people and they quit their jobs and they left, and we picked Philly because I don't know, we just picked a city. And I went and rented a house and, filled it with IKEA furniture, and that was how it all started.
So if anybody's watching this that's not happy with where they are, you can go live with Amanda.
Yeah. I mean, actually, we're doing it again. So the experience is it's so special to like be in the same living space with people and be building. Like the ideas happen all times during the day. And like that kind of experience was so powerful for us. So we actually decided like, let's do it again. It's not necessarily going to be in this apartment because we're full here, but we're going to rent another apartment and we're going to bring on 4 new fellows in design and development, and we're going to just do it again. So it's a hell of a ride. So if people are interested, we are hiring for it.
How do you turn it off? Or is that the whole point, is not to have more integration than separation in something like that? Part of it
is like the point of it. Like it does keep us in this sort of like creative tornado, but we have had to learn how to turn it off because, you know, it can't be on all the time.
Right.
I saw someone even say like now that we're all working from home, you can all now experience what I have been doing for years, and just like, it's really hard. And someone even said like, I feel less that I'm working from home and more that I'm living at work. And so it's just like, that's kind of what it's felt like for us. And so we've created our own spaces in the house, and we have places where we work and places where we play, but like we're never really out of it. But even if I had an office, I don't think I would really be out of it either. Like, I'm always thinking about this kind of stuff.
Right. And Ben, I guess you tell me about coming to Milwaukee then. Was that, I don't know that whole story. Was that through the accelerator? Is that how that worked? Maybe Ben, you want to kind of take that over?
So this was actually for our Madison program. So Amanda came in, she rented out an apartment. I think actually, Amanda, you might have a better insight out of this. I remember being like, we made the right decision with her, because a week after we had sent out the acceptances, I found out that she had been like pinging everybody else that we had accepted to see like if they wanted to like rent an apartment with her to save costs, without actually meeting them or something like that.
Yeah, I figured let's get a whole house or something.
Yeah, which was fantastic. It's just like, all right, like going lean, you know, keeping our investment dollars for the more important stuff. But yeah, I'll let you kind of take it from there in terms of your decision to switch over to Milwaukee.
So we had been in Philly for 3 months and like had just gotten settled, and then got into, you know, Generator, and we're like, you know, it was basically like, okay, like you're in, we start in 2 or 3 weeks or whatever in Madison. I'd never been to Madison other than the interview. And so I remember like coming, just like telling Ton and the other person we lived with then, and we were just sort of like, all right, like, let's go. Like, so we ended up selling everything. It turns out you can actually return all of your IKEA furniture, even if it's already built, with the receipt in a year. So life hack.
I know that.
So we literally just like went in shifts, like bringing everything back, like cleared out, broke that lease, and like packed up my car and just drove over. We sort of had no idea what we were getting ourselves into, but we just like knew that was the next step. And so we just went. That's how we got here. And then after the program ended, we had just decided to stay in Milwaukee because we had just like met so many people that we were like, I don't want to, it didn't feel right to like up and go already. I felt like I hadn't done enough. I was just getting started.
Now, if that was just a requirement for all that they have to move to Milwaukee, we could be just an influx city.
As well.
That's awesome. So Ben, what do you think? So, you know, I think Amanda and the Fiveable team done such a good job, I think, locally getting the brand out there. If anybody has ever seen her at a pitch competition, I feel like you just feel the passion for what they do. What's something that you think people don't know about Amanda or Fiveable that you wish was maybe broader knowledge?
You could probably get it because I think she's pretty open about talking with it, but everybody at some point or another, no matter how well things are going, does experience some like high or low. And kind of what I talked about with this kind of proxy, a good proxy for like how they're going to handle those is like the type of leadership she was already showing by like rallying this group around her. She's been able to do some like absolutely mind-blowing things with this group, with like the loyalty that she's forged on that team, that most people probably couldn't pull off. And I think it comes down to the relationships that she builds, not just with the students, but like with her own employees. When things get like strapped, and hopefully I'm not revealing too much information, to convincing them to actually just like even forego paychecks for a while, because everyone was just so bought into really believing in this product, and that it was going to come through on the other end. There's light at the end of the tunnel. That's a really, really difficult conversation to have. Not many people can have it. Not many people can have it successfully. But I think her mindset has always been from the beginning kind of like, this is happening. Like, I'm going to find a way to do this. And when you kind of accept that to your core, I think knowing what to prioritize in terms of like, I just have to like suck it up and get it done. It just tends to just flow. She has that knack, and not many entrepreneurs do. And I think it's like a good indicator of like who's going to, be able to survive that trough. Because it's going to happen no matter what. You're going to lose a big client. An investor might pull terms. You're going to run out of money. A global pandemic is going to hit. Something's going to happen that's going to force you to kind of rethink everything about your business at some point. And when the crap hits the fan, like, are you the one that's going to be able to, convince people to stick with you through it? Is kind of a big thing. Another thing too is the connections that they make with the kids is actually like pretty astounding. If you ever like scroll through Fiveable's Twitter feed, you'll see people like adding them and saying like, I love you, like literally just the words like, I love you. And I've never seen such a visceral reaction to a product before.
Everybody on Twitter is very nice.
Yeah, totally.
But it's, I think it really speaks to just like how much time and effort they really put into like caring about the kids and, what type of information they're being exposed to and how are they actually interpreting it. There was at one point she was talking to me about the product, and we were like in one of these like deep like whiteboarding sessions where we'd spend like 2.5 hours and like forget what time it was and be like, we should probably leave. She was describing like wanting like a feature where kids could just like very quietly kind of like ask these questions that they were probably holding on to like forever in class. And that really kind of stood out to me. It's just like, it's really it's the type of thing that only a teacher and only like a really good teacher would know to include, is that like there are probably people who are pretty embarrassed that they are falling behind on a specific subject or didn't comprehend something super well. They don't want to be laughed at by their peers or like ridiculed, and they genuinely want to learn. And I think that she's been building this product for like that kid, so like you don't have to be ashamed of where you're at, and they'll kind of adapt it around you with like a big warm hug, and then you'll end up tweeting at them that you love them. But I don't know. Maybe that comes through. I just think it's something that I've always like just admired so much about their dedication to the product and the consumers.
The hugs are our value prop.
Amanda, you took a pivot a while back from a paid model to an unpaid model, if I'm correct.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get to that decision? And you made it like pre-COVID. So a lot of people were making pivots before that, but you made that pre-COVID, and obviously that turned out to be exponential in some of the growth and strategy where you're going. Can you explain that a little bit? And if I'm a little bit off on the story, just correct it.
No, that's right. So basically, like last May, when we were still in the Generator program, we had decided to launch a monthly membership around our content. Mm-hmm. And from the beginning, like content is what we were creating, and it was, where we could provide value. And so that's where we wanted to sell things, because that's what we had. But I think by last December, I mean, as Ben said, like last November and October were just generally last fall were very difficult. Like we went through a lot of ups and downs and mostly downs until we were able to like raise around, and going through all of that forced us to like really look at what are we building? Like if we're not able to get investors, is it because we're not focused on the right thing? Or, maybe our numbers are not moving in the right direction for a reason that is not going to be solved by more money, And so we started to kind of just ask those questions. And like, I spent a long time just like in spreadsheets and talking to kids and talking to teachers. And I just kind of realized that like selling content was not the future, that we were not selling a lot of those memberships, not because kids didn't want to work with us, but because like, they don't want to pay for content. They have YouTube, they have Wikipedia, they have free stuff everywhere. And so why pay for this when I can go get it over here? And so just better understanding the mentality of a kid online and a teacher online, that like when they hit the paywalls, they're just going to go look somewhere else. That led us to a point where we were like, this is what our product right now, we're just not selling the right thing. And so we're not really sure yet what the right thing is. And we sat down as a team and tried to figure it out. But we hit a point where we were like, we know this is wrong. And we know that, spring semester is always going to be big for us. So let's follow our guts right now, and we'll kind of figure the rest out as we go. And that's basically what we did. And so it took us a couple of weeks to get that launched. And by the time we launched it, it was pretty much 3 weeks before COVID hit. And it was like, I mean, that kind of foresight, like it was just not intentional and like not planned. And we just had no idea. And it just happened. And then all of a sudden everything is free. And that was, the norm. But because we had built that into our plan, it didn't affect us as much, and it ended up being a really positive decision.
And obviously, I mean, I don't know how, I was to say, like you had the foresight to do it. I was like, what kind of intel did she have that this was going to be a global pandemic, that you would do that for timing, especially around learning too, before a lot of schools could adapt to anything or still can't. It's pretty remarkable. You've been all over the news. You've been media outlets and things like that with a lot of publicity. For those people that are maybe have just started a startup and haven't raised any money yet, you raised some round lately, or I forgot when it exactly was, but can you tell some people what that process is, how you went about it? How do you, like, just the whole thing? Like, how do you know when someone's going to invest? What is that? I imagine there's a lot of anxiety in that moment and things like that.
Yeah, it's a terrible process. I think I probably pitched, 300 plus times before I closed, and we just closed on some other parts of it, but part of the same round. And it just like I think in the beginning, pitching forced me to kind of think big picture, and think in ways that I wasn't used to. Like when I first started Fiveable, like I had no idea about startups, about fundraising. Like I had seen Shark Tank and I didn't even really have any idea how that was related to real life. I just thought this is like a show. And I don't know, I just didn't know. I had no interaction with it. And so the very first time I even understood that was possibility was the first accelerator I did, Beta Boom. I had just seen a Google ad. And after I saw that, then I was like, wait a second, people will like invest and there's a program, they'll teach me things. And then I went down a whole rabbit hole. And then in building the first few pitch decks, I should find them. They're probably terrible, but it was the first time I was asking the big questions. And then Beta Boom had me pitching to some investors that were far ahead of where we were. And that was actually kind of good because then I had to I just kept having to be at a level that I wasn't yet at. But I think when you're talking to investors, I honestly think the most important thing is you're just not building for them. Like raising money is not your goal. Like that you are building a business that has far other metrics and goals, and the money is just meant to get you there. And I think in the early days, it was kind of hard for me to separate those because we had nothing. Like I ended up cashing out my retirement fund from when I was a teacher, which, may have been a terrible decision. I don't know, maybe it was the best decision, but I had to do it. And so we were just in survival mode for so long that anywhere there was going to be a check, I was going to have to go because it was either that or we're not eating. What are we going to do? So, but I think the more I understood the reality of it, the pitches have gotten better and more investors have been interested in coming on when I'm so clear about I'm building this and this is my goal and I need the money to do this. And that also helps you when you get a bunch of no's, because then it's whatever, they're just not part of it. That's fine. I think I've gotten to the point now where I'm just I get no's all the time. I got a no today. I got a no yesterday. It doesn't matter. It kind of,
what is the percentage for people? Usually is it 80% no's or
it's it's pretty rough. I mean, I've pitched a lot and I probably have, 15 or 16 different investors, different angels and stuff. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, my acceptance rate is pretty low, but I think that's just kind of how it is. Maybe mm-hmm. that's different for me as just a woman of color.
We're trying to raise money for a building right now, and yeah, I'd say that's pretty on with how many times people say no to you. It's maybe 10% yeses.
Yeah. So it's a lot of no's. So I think I just get to a point where someone says no, I'm just they're just kind of saying no for right now. That's how I see it. Mm-hmm. Is they might change their mind. This wasn't their thing right now. That's fine. And sort of whatever, their loss is where I end up.
That's awesome. We're coming into some of our last couple of minutes here if anyone in the audience has any questions. But I wanted to ask, so while you were getting started, it sounds like maybe you didn't have connections in tech or VC, right? You got started through that accelerator. Obviously things like Generator, an incredible resource. Are there other things that you would point sort of early stage entrepreneurs to as good places to start? Twitter,
for sure. I mean, honestly, like I don't know how many people I've met on Twitter, but I feel very much, I know what's being talked about, and I've learned a lot from a lot of different people that way, and seen different examples, and I understand the space better. I think just generally, I mean, honestly, I think the accelerator programs are a really great place to start, and there's many of them, but I think just applying for something that can help move you faster, that even if you don't think you're ready, you're just it just kind of gives you like a sense of what's next. And then just anytime people want to meet with you, you just meet with everybody. And then you put them all on an email list and you just keep them updated. And like that alone has opened up a lot of different doors of everybody knows someone wants to connect you with this person. And then you just like keep taking meetings until all you do is meet with people, but it's worth it because then like people come through and when you least expect it.
Ben, can you tell us kind of a little bit more about some of the ways that Generators helped Fiveable along the way, or like what kind of things that you, just for people that might have never went through Generator, what some of the things that you can do for a company that helps them out along the way in that process?
Yeah, sure. And Amanda, if I overstep, correct me. But generally speaking, I think a lot of the stuff that Amanda's describing, there's kind of like have any of you used Noom? I'm like using it right now to try to get rid of my COVID-19. It's a great like kind of behavioral tool for around like dieting and like weight loss, and there's like a lot of great education components to it. There are like very specific things that they tell you to do, so like eat foods with like low caloric density. So like, lots of water weight, still makes you feel full, less calories, you end up losing weight by creating a deficit. There are similar things to entrepreneurship that I think are just like good hygiene as a founder to have, that we try to get them in the habit of doing. One of them is kind of exactly what Amanda described around like meet with everybody. You never know what you're going to find. Even if on its face, it just seems like there's no match or value in the meeting. You'd be shocked at what you can extract in terms of value, both in like continued, connections into network, but also just like insights from a completely different industry than you'd expect, because you don't see the pattern recognition that other people do stemming from their experience. So typically what we see, first of all, we heavily center the program around network and connections and introductions. So the first like 2-3 weeks of the program, we essentially sit everyone in rooms and we get them to like speed date with all these different people from like various backgrounds. Some of them are investors who want like an early look, but a lot of them are just like, C-suite execs, founders themselves who have had some good experience, technologists, people who have like random backgrounds and like, logistics and food and beverage and stuff like that. It's a little bit all over the map. There's a very diverse spread, and we usually have quite a few industry verticals represented in every cohort. So we jam as many people in as we can. We get them to blow up the business model with all their feedback, and then we kind of put the pieces together throughout the program. And at the end, what we're trying to do is educate on essentially what does the math look like for an investor. Typically, the only option that is available for a lot of early stage folks when they're trying to get their business off the ground, if they need outside financing and they don't have a ton of money or cash reserves to keep it going, is venture investment or angel investment. The more money you make, the more mature the business becomes, the more options you have available. You can do like PO financing and factoring and stuff like that. But in the beginning, a bank's probably not going to touch it; it's too risky. So we're trying to educate on what do the mathematics of venture capital look like. So what is a fund actually looking for, and what are the considerations that they're making when they're trying to vet an investment? What are best practices around putting together a pitch deck? But a lot of it is going back to that hygiene piece. Who are you meeting with? How are you kind of allocating your time and resources? How are you staying in touch with people? There's a lot of things that we've noticed that tend to be as behaviors in entrepreneurs that tend to be correlated with, really good results. So like founders who send monthly updates extremely consistently with really robust data tend to be the owners of the most valuable stock in our portfolio. That's just kind of like a fact out of 100 plus investments over 8 years that really stands out to us. So if you don't do that, like you're opening yourself up to fewer chances and opportunities. Less people know what you're working on. They have less opportunities to come in and help. And so I'm rambling a little bit. Essentially, a lot of what we do is we open up the network. We try to coach people on essentially how to prioritize their time and how they should be looking at their own business through the lens of would they invest in themselves. And I think it's just a healthy exercise regardless of whether or not they're seeking the venture financing. And then in the back end, we tailor a lot of pitch sessions. So we typically try to target at least 80, somewhere between 80 and 100 one-on-one pitch sessions with different venture groups around the country.
Awesome. I think I'd love to close out with, so for you, Amanda, as a founder, locally here or I guess in Wisconsin, what kind of support can the community be providing to you? What sort of things would help from an ecosystem perspective for you and for other entrepreneurs?
I mean, I think just like any way that you can amplify messages, like people know students, people know teachers. And this is true for any like local businesses, right? Like amplify people, like share their LinkedIn message, retweet them, like tell your friend and your brother or your aunt or whoever like comes to mind. Because as Ben said, like oftentimes we don't know like who's actually going to be a really valuable person to know. And so even if what I'm building would just be useful for your student, like we take students help us all the time too. And so maybe your student has like a great idea of what something we could build. And so I think just sharing things and digging into things is always just really helpful. And then just, opportunities like this too, of course, like anytime I can share my story or just meet people, like it's always a good day. Cause it's just like, I feel like people have held the door open for me and that's what has gotten me here. And now, however, I can hold the door open for other people. And so that's just like another way of anyone to think about it too, of like anything that you have access to, if you can hold the door open for someone that like that needs resources or just networking or talking to people, like that is a really valuable resource that anyone can do for any entrepreneur.
Awesome. Well, with that being said, thank you for your time. And we appreciate both of you for coming on today. And I guess I'll close it out with just keep building and we'll keep watching and helping any we can. Thank you for your time today.
The building continues for sure.
Indeed.
Thank
Cheers.
you.
Take care.
Bye.
Cheers. Thank you.